Tell me if I'm missing something. This is very obviously take the cat. Would you rather 15K or a bet that if it wins, you get 20K? I can bet the 15K on the Thunder at plus 135 and get $35,000 if it wins instead of 20K. Disclaimer. The content presented in this show is intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions expressed are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of any individuals or organizations mentioned. Statements made about public figures or entities are based on publicly available information and are not intended to harm or defame any person or business. This show relies on fair use of social media posts, which are presented in good faith for the purpose of commentary and criticism. Viewers and listeners are advised to form their own opinions. For this week's show, we found a lot of people giving out what they consider to be sports betting advice. We're going to analyze that with the first three sections of today's show, but a whole lot more also coming at you today on Circle Back here on the Circles Off channel, which is part of the Hammer Betting Network and presented by Kalshi. This is the show where we cover the latest and greatest news that comes from gambling Twitter. I'm your host here on Circle Back. My name is Jacob Gramegna. I am a creator and producer here at the Hammer Betting Network. Joining me for today, we have a little bit of a different cast for today. We have Joey Knish as normal, co-host on the Hit the Books YouTube channel, which is the Hammer's college football content division. But no Mike today. Instead, we have two other guests joining us. Firstly, we have China at Chinamaniac joining us in the bottom left corner. And then in the top right corner, we have Porter at BA Analytics _. Firstly, China, how you doing? Nice to have you back on the show.
Doing great, man. Can't wait to jump into all this great stuff today.
And Porter, we got you again here. You feel like we got a good list of topics for today?
Yeah, I do. First time I've been on the show back to back. Hopefully I can keep making stuff up that people like to hear.
All right. Well, we're going to jump into things. There was a bit of excitement to cover this one before we started recording today. It's a tweet that comes from Jared Smith at Jared Smith Bets. Does a lot of sports betting content, especially on Twitter, which is where we're covering this tweet from. So he says, how can you make solid bets on random mid-major conference tourney games without doing any research about the teams? 1, let the sharps plant their flag on the side or total. 2, the line will steam in that direction. 3, bet the other side. These mid-major games typically have less liquidity, which means the line typically move too much when professional groups give them out to their clients. Will you win every time? No. Will you likely be making plus EV bets? Yes. This approach requires zero knowledge about the teams, just a good odds screen and access to a lot of sports books. He provides an example for Jacksonville Bellarmine, which is a game that was happening when he tweeted this. A professional gave out under 148. The total steamed down 4 points. The game is flying over. Again, it's not always going to work out that way, but over 144 was a great bet. So using a specific example there, let's start off with Porter. Do you think this is sound advice that could actually lead to winning at sports betting?
So I really like this topic because it reminds me of what I go through really often. This is like the classic example of having a little bit of knowledge in the industry can create a lot of damage. And he covers his ass a lot in this by like making a lot of happenstance comments about doesn't always win. Is it plus EV? Will you win every time? No. So I almost feel like he knows this kind of BS, but here's the problem with this. 1, if you don't have a model or you know where the number is going to move, who says that you shouldn't bet the number after it moved 1 point, after it moved 2 points, after it moved 3 points? He doesn't know. What if he bet it after it moved 2 points, but then it moved 2 more? So now he's in the dead middle. So this is just kind of your classic, Jared creates content, doesn't really know sports betting that well. He even writes that he's not a pro. Like somewhere else in here, he wrote that he's not a pro bettor. And this is your classic example of like, he's seen something that sounds good. He's seen it work a few times. Anecdotally, it feels right. He has a little bit of knowledge about the space, but doesn't understand all the intricacies and like why this isn't good.
All right, let's go to China next, our other guest for today's show. Your thoughts on the advice we have here?
Yeah, like there's spots in certain markets where you might be able to win with less information, but like NCAA hoops is probably not one of these markets. The bottom line is if you're not on the side of the origination, like Porter alluded to, somebody that has a top flight model, I mean, you either got to be on that side or you got to be going with the steam as it goes. And, you know, with this angle, if somebody goes in and tries to shoot this angle, they may win for a year, they may win for 2 years. But the bottom line is over a large sample, this is just going to probably get destroyed. At the end of the day, like Porter said, the best syndicates in the world know how far that line should move. And if that line does move too far, they're going to bet it back. And when they do bet it back, you know, they're going to be getting value on both sides because it moved so far. So how do you know, how does somebody that's not a professional bettor or somebody that has any idea where this line should be, how do they know how far that line is going to go? You know, some of the groups I work with, I know for a fact the line moves a certain amount of points, they know they can bet it back. And like, I could probably hear the cheers from Spanky's office when these middles hit and he's 3 states away. And again, like, not the average everyday guy that just fades this is going to know where to fade it, like Porter said.
And over to you, Knish, your take on things.
I almost can guarantee who we got this from and where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And this is he's a Fez. He's I don't know if they're like, you know, distant relatives, but I guarantee this was Steve Fezzik telling him this info, which might have worked circa 15 years ago, like a lot of the, you know, the Fez methodology here of a service, likely in this case, you know, Right Angle Sports releases a total, it moves way too far, and then you bet it back. The simple, it sounds good, but one, as the other guys alluded to, you don't know where the bottom is. If you don't know what you don't know when that number should come back. And if you're just going right before post, like, okay, the numbers move 4 points, now I'm going to bet back, because it, like, there would be somebody else in the market, especially for like college basketball conference tourney games, that if there was still value at the number, would likely bet the number back. So yes, it's moved 4 points, but if there was value on betting over 144, there would be people out there, especially before post when it's most liquid, that would then bet the over on 144 and it would move back up. So there's a lot of holes in this. I think maybe at some point in the past, could this have worked theoretically in certain markets? Maybe, but no, just as like I'm just going to fade the steam and think it'll win. No, I don't think this is a good generic approach to good advice to take for somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the classic, like, he got the first 20% of the story kind of right, and then missed all the like complicated things that you need to understand afterwards, which makes sense because he has just a little bit of knowledge. Yeah.
So on the Fezzik stuff that Knish mentioned here, somebody asked him in the replies, have you back tested this? He said, no, it's just anecdotal and confirmed by some pros I trust. As soon as I saw some pros I trust, I kind of had an idea of who the pro he trusted who told him to do this. They estimate, they being the pros, about 90% of the time the line moves too much, especially total. So 90% of the time, apparently, you're getting a plus EV position here. But if you actually were getting a plus EV position, you know, like the guys have covered here, this would get bet back towards going, like, so let's say in this case 144, that would get bet back towards the over. So unless you were finding this bet at the absolute bottom, like the absolute dip, and it's going to get bet back up and you're going to get good Sylvie, that's going to be a position where you're going to have a plus TV wager in this circumstance. But your ability to find that, with the claim here being your ability to do this without doing any research, there's just no way that's going to happen. How do you know when you're getting the best number there, when you're getting it at the dip or even close to the dip there? I don't think this is a strategy that is viable towards winning at all. And cherry picking one example that fits into the idea that you gave out here, cherry picking one specific example, is not at all doing anything to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I got something to add here. So syndicate bets it, syndicate moves it. The syndicate's going to have better software than the average Joe, and they're going to know when to bet it back. So like you're almost never really going to get to the right point to jump in, and if you do, you're just guessing. Yeah,
agreed. So I don't see where this is coming from here. I do not recommend following advice just like this. But some advice I can give to the people watching the channel is to subscribe, and we've got a message coming at you here. I appreciate every one of you that watches our content every week, but there are also people who watch who aren't subscribed yet. Now listen, I will forgive you and call it an honest mistake. Do me a favor and subscribe right now as we push for 22,000 subscribers. The larger the channel grows, the more content we can provide to you. Now, let's get back to the content. Next topic, sticking with the theme, we have some more advice that was brought to the fray on gambling Twitter. This time from Ashcon Bets, who says, sports betting advice, stop trying to turn 5K into 100K. Turn 5K into 8K, withdraw 5K. Turn 3K into 8K slowly, withdraw 3K. Repeat, 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 repeat until bankroll grows bigger. This way, if you ever make a mistake, which everyone does at some point, it won't kill your profits. So I'm a little bit confused by some of the terminology here, especially saying, withdraw as your bankroll grows bigger. But perhaps we could go to Knish on this one. Do you have any reaction to this sort of advice?
I mean, this is almost like mirrors the first topic of a little bit of like, in essence, is there some like logic, a little bit, maybe like that 20% that makes sense, where if you're trying to like, okay, in the essence of, should you try and turn like, your 12 leg parlay into, betting $5 to win 1,000 and like that type of betting, I can see like shying away from. But in that instance, a lot of people, it's not granular enough to be like if someone's going to then turn like 5, and if they're using the same type of betting strategy, like recreational betting strategy, to go and to like go 5 to 8 or 3 to 8 or one of the, it's not going to make a difference. So there's an element of, yes, you shouldn't just like go from like the lottery ticket stuff that to go from like, oh, I want to make it all right now. However, it's missing the steps that actually get you to like win 5 to 8 and then be able to withdraw it, or go 3 to 8 and then withdraw it. Like there's layers in there that, again, it's only one tweet, but you're not going to be able, if you're a losing bettor or your betting strategy is not winning, just saying like, okay, I'm going to try and like win slowly and then do it, not going to change anything. You have to be able to win to even like make this effect at all.
Yeah, with you on that one. Let's get Porter's thoughts on this set of advice.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much spot on. This kind of reminds me, though, a little bit of this guy's watched a lot of like old ladies at the slot machine where they'll like hit $100, they'll take it out, and then they'll be like, all right, now I'll just play 20. And they're like, all right, I made like $6. Let me take the $6 out. But eventually, this strategy almost always has you putting it all back in. Also, like Knish said, like you first have to have like a winning strategy to like bankroll won't fix winning or losing. Bankroll might keep you in the game, which might be worse, by the way, longer to lose, waste your time, but you can't like solve your problems by bankroll management. But I think this guy just watched like some people on the slot machine taking out their winnings and thought you could somehow apply this to sports betting. It doesn't apply for slots either, by the way.
And China, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, so like slowly winning like 3 to 5K, that implies that you already know how to win, which not everybody does. So the bottom line is, I think this guy's implying like you make mistakes dusting your bankroll. If you do that, I mean, you're just not cut out for this. So, the key to moving your bankroll to like new heights is just taking calculated risks on plus EV bets. So like Porter said, with the lady putting the money in and out of the slot machine, I have a friend that does this. He goes to the casino and he thinks he has an edge because he just hits and runs blackjack, but almost inevitably he's going to go on a bad run and he's just going to wind up feeding it all back. So the bottom line is you just want to be betting the max to where you won't bust yourself and just let the money pile up as you're betting on plus EV stuff.
I just don't understand the message here, which is like build your bankroll, but like you're taking money out. If like you guys said, if you're turning 5K into 8K, you and it's not just like one lucky win, for example, you've established you can win. You should be increasing your unit size. That's how you actually properly build your bankroll. If you want to build your bankroll, you need to keep that money in those accounts. Now, you have to be honest with yourself and you have to establish like, yes, am I a winning bettor? If that's the case and you're able to do things like turn 5K into 8K like we saw there over time, you should probably keep it in there. That's the proper way to build your bankroll. I just see it very counterintuitive to take the money out of your account if you actually like want to avoid, making mistakes and going bust, like your unit size is a percentage of that bankroll. So if you start to lose money, well, the unit size decreases. That's how you avoid going bust. So
I'm gonna make a wild
don't
guess
understand it
here.
here.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a wild guess here that he has experienced something like this before, where he thought he had an edge, and he thought his error in ways was the bankroll management that could fix it, when it's probably not. And I'm just saying that because I've kind of heard this story before from other bettors who win for a period of time and then don't really understand why they lost, and then have to put a story together to themselves, I don't mean to the public, of why things didn't work out. So they create, I didn't have proper bankroll management, or a little bit of a dream of like, man, I wish I put aside a little bit of money so I could use the money for something else. So it kind of reminds me of other stories that I've heard before.
Well said.
I didn't exactly look into this guy's profile, but would he happen to be selling anything?
Let me have a look.
I love how we do the
Oftentimes,
I love how we do the research live.
I mean, he had a picture with like $200,000 sitting there and saying, you just take out 3-5K at a time.
yeah, he's selling it's a pick selling service.
There you
Of
go.
course it is.
Jock it.
Yeah. All right. There it is. We'll get back to more betting advice in just a second here. My advice to you, though, is to check out the other content we have at the Hammer Betting Network. Let's hear more on that now. Already missing out on the college football season? Then look no further. The Hit the Books team of Joey Knish and Brad Powers are back, giving you some more content on the channel. In the next week, we'll have 4 videos coming out to satisfy that appetite for NCAA football. To make sure you don't miss out on the videos, make sure you subscribe to our college football division, the Hit the Books channel. The link is in the description to go and check out that channel right now. Third set of advice, we're once again revisiting Raheem Palmer at I Am Rostradamus. My thoughts on CLV. It's simply the most sustainable way of getting an edge and winning long term. There's a reason sportsbooks limit people who beat the closing line. That said, although I can beat the closing line consistently if I want to, I've personally been very successful betting right before game time because I'm a better handicapper. If you give me the maximum amount of time and information to process and make a decision. Sports betting is a multiplayer game. You're not playing against the bookmakers, you're playing against the entire market. Thus, I can capitalize on spots where I think sharps and the public are wrong, or I have a different opinion. Here's 2 scenarios from this week alone. Sunday, sharps/public bet the Spurs up to -1 on the road. My model makes the Knicks -1.8. I take the Knicks at almost even money right before tip-off. Monday, sharps/public bet Pistons up to -2.5 as road favorites. I bet Cavs plus 2.5 right before the game time because I strongly disagree with the market. Ultimately, there are times when it's beneficial to bet early, and there are times when it's beneficial to bet late. It's just about timing the market according to the game you're playing. If you follow my NFL best bets on the Ringer Sunday NFL pregame show the last 2 years, I've consistently had a winning record, essentially betting into closing NFL lines every Sunday, so that should tell you there's more than one way to be successful doing this. Let's start with China on this topic here. Do you agree with what he's saying, or do you have disagreements here?
I mean, he said one thing that was pretty good, but like in the grand scheme of things, like a 3-year sample in the NFL isn't much. Like I get that in 1 day betting, a 3-year sample in the NFL. I get that in a week. You get that sample just betting every single day. So that sample size is nothing. If you do get CLV, you will win over a large sample size. I think everybody agrees on that. Whether he wins or not at post, I have no idea. But I will say, beating the market at post is extremely difficult. And the people who do beat markets at post, they're not taking time to process and figure things out. They have the answers, and they're just hoping that that stuff hangs around long enough so they can bet big enough at post. So I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It seems like a lot of hokey pokey BS in here to me.
How about you, Porter? What's your take on this?
So I feel like we're going through these slides and like maybe each one is getting a little bit more knowledgeable. Like we're going up the scale, but we're still only at like 50% of the way there. So obviously, actually, I've always had a hard time explaining. That's a pretty nice, succinct way to write like basic thoughts on CLV. Whether this guy wins at post, I have no idea. I would not recommend most people do that. And it kind of turned into an advertisement at the end of the message. But I do think there's like some decent thought process in here. I don't know if I wouldn't recommend the audience try to win, post especially NFL post. But in general, like the theme here is correct. Is like the final answer really he wins, and this can work out? Not for 99.9% of people.
Okay. And how about you, Knish?
Jacob, put the slide back on the screen here, because here I'm gonna help Raheem out. If you delete out the second paragraph and the last paragraph, this is a great tweet. Like, this is a great. That's all he had to do was just axe that second paragraph, which I can beat the closing line if I want to, and the maximum amount of time, and then axe the promo where I beat that, and like I could be like, oh yeah, good point, he nailed it. Did I need the 8 millionth CLV argument discussion here? And no, probably not. But he had it if he just the I'm a better handicapper if you give me the max amount of time and information. Like, there's no difference, assuming let's say you've got an NBA game and you get the final reports at whatever time, and there's no difference in let's say at 3:00, and if the game's going to tip off at 7:00, and who's playing for both sides, that 4 hours of there's zero difference in what you knew between 3 and 7, or what your model's going to show between 3 and 7, and who's going to play. The only difference is final liquidity, and the people that are waiting until that 6:58 or 6:59 are at the absolute very, very, very top of the food chain, and those aren't people you want to bet against, and for the most part, for 99.999% of people. So I think Raheem he's probably typing this in. It seems like also that he put this into a chat GPT or something, the way it's laid out. So I think he was feeling himself. He got a little bit too high on his own supply there, high horse, and if he would have just taken out those 2 paragraphs, it would have been a nice run. But he dipped his toe a little bit too much into the I can beat NFL at post waters.
Yeah, so in that second paragraph that you mentioned, he says, if you give me, I'm a better handicapper, if you give me the maximum amount of time and information to process and make a decision. Guess who else is much better at pricing things when you give them the maximum amount of time and information to process and make a decision? The sportsbook. The limits go up at these points. If he's genuinely confident he's beating these major markets, NBA sides or NFL sides at post, there are massive limits to take advantage of there. So, I guess, if you do trim that away, it does look a little bit better, because sure, CLV is a phenomenal indicator of success. That is the true way of determining success or better, as he mentions a little bit in the first paragraph. But I don't think this is a viable strategy. And going on China's point with the sample size over an extreme long term, I'd be a little surprised if there was a lot of success here.
So I think a lot of these posts are actually really interesting. They give you glimpses of what people who are kind of in the content space, a little bit in the betting space, kind of their mindsets, and it kind of shows you almost how dangerous it is, and almost probably why it's addictive to a lot of people to stay in the game, because they feel like they're on the cusp of understanding. And someone who's sharp even sees that there is some knowledge, they are expressing some knowledge of value, but then there's so much else in there that's kind of, let's just say for what it wrong, that it's dangerous for the public to consume this, because at face value, if you really know nothing, it doesn't sound that bad. The problem is when you're going 50% away of this industry, and the way that difficulty that it is to win, especially in large markets, you can't just have 50% of the knowledge. And having 50% of this knowledge is probably more dangerous than not having any at all.
I just think there's good seeds of information in here, but maybe a bit of, like Knish said, a bit of overconfidence in some other areas of it as well. But that'll get us into the next topic on the show, which comes from Joe Weisenthal, who said, big whiff here. And it was a prediction market graph of the odds on the Texas Republican Senate primary first round winner. So right near the market close, John Cornyn was around 10%, then all the way vaulted up to 98% as the eventual winner, ahead of, I believe it was Ken Paxton, who went from this very, very large favorite and ended up losing. So he says, big whiff here. One of the replies from at 80 high says, Joe, don't make me tap the sign. And it says, events with a 10% probability tend to happen 10% of the time. So how do we feel about this? Because large amount of the people in this market, and there's not a ton of volume here, but a large percentage of people in this market felt like it was going to go towards Ken Paxton, that it didn't. So that it didn't, excuse me. So who's right here? Like, do we need to acknowledge sometimes these unlikely things happened, or was it a big whiff from the bettors originally? Let's go to Porter first of all.
Yeah, so actually super interesting that this market came up today, because I follow some Twitter guys and they were commenting about this 2 days ago. Why is Ken Paxton so high? So I feel like somebody must have made quite a bit of money. I mean, whatever the volume is here.
Well, so the volume is 62,000 here.
Yeah, so there were a few people tweeting on Twitter about this topic, that Ken Paxton shouldn't be so high. But yeah, I mean, I always use that statement I think is really spot on. Like a 90% event loses 10% of the time. I think when you have a lot of skills that cross other gambling ventures, like being an AP or playing poker, you have a better ability to understand what odds actually mean, because it's super common in poker to come up with spots where you're like 80-20 and yeah, you lost 20% of the time. I think it's a lot of this like broken taillight syndrome where like, oh, I see the broken taillight all the time. It's broken. When really it's not. You're just focusing on that event when it happens. And it's the same thing here. When a 10% event happens, 1 out of 10 times, like it's not that common. So when it happens, you really lock in on it. And that's a perfect example of what's going on here. It's just very like, now I'm not saying that Kalshi or wherever this was bet is 100% accurate at close, but they're still like indicatively pretty close. My guess is in the right direction. Though again, I did see some like smart people say that they felt this market was totally off.
Yeah, you liken it to poker. Like you'd even go to like a sports perspective where, yeah, sometimes a team that's a 90% chance to win is not going to win. March Madness is coming up soon. We may see examples of that there. So it's just in markets like this, I think it's tough for some people maybe not as familiar in the prediction market. I think it's tough for them to understand it. And when they see 90%, and I think even a lot of recreational bettors, super square recreational bettors, will see like a team has a 90% chance to win. They go, there's no possible way they lose, but of course there is that chance of it happening. Knish, go over to you next. Give us your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to have you pull the slide again because 62,000 in volume to me seems like, I mean, if I'm looking at a market and I only see 62K traded, I'm not going to have like the full fate of like, okay, we've gotten a lot of, this has been like absolutely traded, through the ground where I'm having a lot of confidence in that number. The other thing would be, and this is more of a macro point, and I don't know, I can't even like formulate it in my head. It feels like United States politics on a smaller level like this, where we're talking like a primary runoff, even going up a few levels, the unpredictability of the American voter right now, I think has just made these where like it's almost like a distrust in polling in general has kind of led to a fact where I think you get a little bit more. How can I put it in this way? I don't know if the American political climate like breeds itself to like hyper efficiency in terms of like predicting markets, because you just see in a lot of areas like constant swings now between voter demographics, between like overall, I don't know. I would say it's a maybe just, and I haven't worn this out, this is very anecdotal, like an opportunity out there for people that are grinding politics, that it is definitely not a solved market in a lot of cases around the country, especially when you get down to these lower levels where in both Texas races here, the longer term favorite lost in both the Republican and the Democratic, areas. So, and I think you get that across a lot of races where it now seems like as people just demographics change, people's opinion change, it just flips on kind of more of a notion than I don't know, I guess what I'm recalling. Again, not a lot of data to back that there, but it feels like something like opportunistic if you're really grinding the political realm.
I think prediction markets are really good sources of information for news and especially like in politics. But as you mentioned, the volume here, I wouldn't see that and be like, oh, like this must be close to a lock, 90%. We're talking like, hundreds of thousands getting towards a million. Now I'm like, okay, I'm quite confident this is accurately priced, but maybe not quite there with that volume. Finally, over to China on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, in these type of markets, if like any type of information gets out there that's bad, they're liable to run the wrong way as well. Something like this happened in the Super Bowl. I got a few DMs like, "Hey, Travis Scott's at the game. I talked to somebody. He's gonna perform. He's gonna perform this and that." And then I talk to somebody super sharp that comes back and says, "Hey, there's no way this guy is performing unless he's a headliner." So like, I think the wrong information can get out there. A market can run, and this happens in poker all the time. You could be a 98% favorite on the flop and lose to a runner straight flush. It's just what happens in gambling. And I think to echo what Porter said, it's the same thing. You see the broken taillight, you just remember the broken taillight. But, so many events, this is going to happen once in a while.
I want to add a semi-hot take to this. So let's just pretend there was a ton of liquidity. When a market is live, I actually believe at every single moment, like let's say the liquidity was really high. I believe at every single moment the market is pretty close or effectively correct. So it didn't go from 90-10 to 0-98. There was a moment where it went from 90 to 89, from 89 to 88. Now sometimes those percentages move too fast for the human eye because there's some bots firing off. But I would argue that at every one of those moments, the odds were relatively correct. It's just sometimes those moments, you could have a 40 cent drop in 1 second. But within that 1 second, as the odds change, they were correct for that moment. So I don't know if that's a hot take, but my idea is like every moment as the odds are changing, it is correct. It's just sometimes that moment is very condensed.
Yeah. I mean, compare it to like an NBA team down by 20 as they're making the comeback. Maybe it's a bit slower than in a case like this, but as the team is coming back, the odds are changing. Every basket, every point that they're making up on the opposition, the odds are slowly changing in that direction. So I definitely see your point on that one there. We're about to get into our next topic, but if you want to get involved with markets just like that, you can head over to our presenting sponsor here on Circles Off, the channel. Head over to Kalshi. We have the link in the description box below. You can get involved with Kalshi. Get involved with prediction markets and find unique markets like this that you won't find everywhere in the betting landscape. Now we're going to head into the comment from the previous week's show to get your take on things, get your perspective on things, and see if you can give us a new perspective at times. So the lead off of the previous show we did was the minus 10,000 debacle that occurred at DraftKings, where every golfer was priced at minus 10,000, and it was priced so that anyone who had a bet on the tournament could cash out on any of the futures or any of the outrights that they had. We learned a few things about this after we recorded the show. First of all, at the Knish 1976 says what really happened was the odds provider for DraftKings was doing price adjustments and made a change that they messed up on, and it caused an error for all of the participants to move a decimal price to a decimal price of 1.01. The trader should have suspended the markets before doing that, essentially on a non-playing tournament day. Someone at DK should have caught it quickly, but it seemed like it was up for a while, especially when someone has time to take a picture and tweet it. And a lot of people were able to take advantage of this and get their cash outs in, so it was up for a significant amount of time. But Jeff O'Reilly added here in the comments, DK locked the accounts for about 24 hours and then reopened them all with money intact. They only got hit with some limits, didn't get a full limit hammer. So I said it on the last week's show, anybody who got the money out, congratulations to you. But DraftKings, to my surprise, just let it be. Whoever took the cash out, they got their money. Maybe some limits were involved, but the people who had the money in their account were able to allow it to see the light of day. Knish, first of all, any take on this? Was that surprising to you that DraftKings allowed the people to cash out?
Yeah, my theory would be that they didn't get hit that hard because there was a DraftKings thing we talked about, about a month ago where there was the player prop mistake on their pick six thing, which I think they got absolutely hammered on. And then we're, doing whatever they could to eliminate. The fact that they did it this way now, a month later, makes me think, because if you think about it, you would have already had to have a bet early I think this happened on a Monday, right? So early, you would have already had to have your bet in for the week for the golf tournament that's coming up. And then you would have had to like put 2 and 2 together and catch this, that you could go in and cash it out. And especially, and it really like is beneficial for the guys that were betting, you know, the 5,000 ones, that type of thing. So my thought is that they didn't get absolutely crushed on this, so they just kind of let it go. And that was figuring like, okay, well, instead of trying to do what we and take the whole like the PR, I'm not going to call it a win, but instead of doing what happened with the pick six thing, they just kind of let it fly.
Okay, Porter, we had you on last. We talked about this. So with this new information, any update to reaction on things?
Yeah, it's weird to me because actually they didn't get that much publicity on this, so they didn't even. I don't really think they even capitalized on the PR. Maybe I don't have a great.
That's a good point.
I don't have a great take on this. You know, we joke that DK does a lot of things wrong. Maybe they did something wrong that was good for the players one time.
Yeah, good point. It's probably like two sides to it. On one hand, it could have been like, you know, we made a mistake, but every bettor who cashed out got their money and got paid. But also that would be acknowledging the very large mistake that they made with this. But like, I feel like acknowledging that is fine for bettors to accept. Like it's beneficial to the bettor. So I didn't think about it from a marketing perspective. They probably could have taken that angle there and turned this loss of money into basically marketing spend. China, we didn't have you on last week, but your take on the minus 10,000 thing that happened, or any of the comments we saw here?
I'm kind of with Knish on this. I mean, they just probably didn't get hit that hard. Knowing DraftKings, if they did get hit pretty hard, then they would have probably reversed everything, and you know there'd be all kinds of chaos going on about this. So I don't know. They probably nuked some accounts, and you know that's it. I'm happy for anyone that got the money out.
Okay. Good stuff on that comment there. Those two comments, thank you for the additional information. Second comment comes from Delhi2313. Says, one hilarious point missed here. The guy who bet $5 at 5,000 to 1 to win 25K got just under 22K cash on something priced at over 99% win probability. Tells you something about the old cash out offers. I didn't consider this element too, but yes, we did showcase some screenshots where the golfers were at minus 10,000, and in that case, extraordinarily likely to win based on that price, even though we know, of course, it was a mistake. But the cash out wasn't really that close to the full amount. So maybe an example of cash outs, the predatory nature of cash outs at times. China, we'll go first with you on this one. What do you think on that?
Honestly, I got nothing to add to this one.
Okay. Porter, how about yourself?
Yeah, it's a nice find by the guy. You know, this is kind of a slap in the face of all the touts that don't know what they're talking about and start mentioning stuff about cashing out, betting two slips, cashing one out, all this like nonsense. Just basically ties that up very nicely into why that isn't a great idea.
Knish, anything to add before we go to the final comment?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked cash out, but it is not the way to. I mean, this was one of the rare scenarios where cashing out was a great idea.
Yes.
Yeah, when your 5,001 goes to minus 1,000, yes, cash her out. But usually, I mean, I've said in the past, the only time where I would utilize it's information. It's either a mistake like this or information where, if you got like a player future to win MVP, and you see, the Shams note he pop up that he tore his ACL, and you can run in there and cash it out for whatever you can, then that's one of the rare scenarios that I think it works. But in most cases, yeah, cash out is not a great idea for the bettor.
And final comment comes from Kyle Kerms. He had a couple of possible topics. I preferred the first one, so I featured it here. He says, if a tout sells on a pick-selling platform, are they vouching for the legitimacy of everybody else on that platform? I will start with China on this one. Probably the most anti-tout person on this panel, I'd say. Not to say that the others are not anti-tout, but like, do you feel like this is the case? Like, what if somebody that you respect as a sports bettor, for one reason or another, decides to start selling on DubClub?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody that if Porter started to sell on a DubClub, then yeah, whatever. I mean, what is the actual question? Does
so let's say in that example, if Porter starts selling on DubClub, does he provide legitimacy to DubClub as a platform?
100% no. But if he did, he would probably start backing all the other guys there. But yeah, they definitely would not provide legitimacy for it. No way.
I don't often see like DubClub cappers going like at each other. Maybe I'm not privy to it, and maybe it does exist, but you're right. They typically try to big each other up, essentially. Knish, we'll go to you second on this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny because the way you said that, like the actual touts that I have in, like, I thought they would win. I thought they would are almost always a solo, like a sole proprietorship or like a solo operation. I can't think of many scenarios where there's been someone who I would say like, oh, that person wins, and they've been part of like a conglomerate, like a DubClub or a WAP. It's almost like this model, even going back to like, like a pregame or one of those. It was usually kind of like a way for the company to, if you got now, like, okay, you got 50 touts, well, 40 of them might be losing, but 10 of them are probably on some type of actual like short-term hot streak. So it's like I can always go to like, the next guy who's had a short-term winning record, but at the same time, like, would that, if you had one, like, I mean, I'll give it to like Hitman, who works for the network now, who I think is a very good bettor. He was part of, I think it was pregame for a while. So would I have expected him to then vouch for the legitimacy of like the other 30 people that work there? No, because like most of them are losers. So like, no, I think it's a little unfair for the solo person to that. But at the same time, it's a very rare find to find somebody that works for these that's an actual legitimate person who I think could then like go out on their own and have success.
And Porter, finally over to you.
Well, hearing the Hitman story that Knish just said, I guess I could go sell there and still be invited on the show. So that's one good sign. I actually feel like it should kind of be the reverse. The companies that put on these touts technically should vouch for them or have liability for them, but obviously we don't see that ever occurring. So I think just for the viewers, it's just very important to note from both ends, the owners of the platform and the sellers on the platform, they're looking to make a buck. They're not out there to protect you. So in general, at least for now, I'm not going to be on DubClub.
Yeah, so to answer my take on the question here, I don't think somebody going to that platform is vouching for the legitimacy of everybody else there. I think we oftentimes like lump people together on the platform, but perhaps maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should dissect it more as individuals within the app. However, you do question if somebody is selling on the platform. You have to question, why are they not just betting these things themselves? So if it is somebody I respect, I'd have to find the reasonings why that is the case. But there are certain outliers to the pick selling debate for sure. We're getting more on pick selling a little bit later on in the show. But before we get into our next topic, comments are a great way to continue the conversation with us. So make sure you comment something down below. If you have a reaction, you have a take, something that you want us to talk about, leave it in the comment section down below. We always check all of the comments, can give some great little tidbits for us to talk about on next week's show, and it can help extend the conversation. But if you want to extend the conversation even further, you can head over to the Discord we have at The Hammer. Let's hear more about that. If you're not in the Discord yet, you are missing out. We have nearly 1,800 members, and it is absolutely cooking. It's a great place to chat during games. Our creators are sharing banger bets, and so is our Hammer audience. Join us at discord.gg/hammer and see what you've been missing out on. The link is in the description to join today. But let's get back to the show. Up next, we have Fanatics Sportsbook posting a would you rather 15K cash or 15K bonus bet on the Thunder to win the NBA Finals at plus 135. China, which one would you rather?
Give me the 15,000. 100 times out of 100. Like, I would rather chew glass than have a piece of any future that's anywhere close to the price that they're going to give me. I don't care how much. If I have to give up a little bit of EV, I give up the EV. Just give me the cash.
Okay. Let's go to Knish. I have a strong take in this one. Let's hear everyone out first.
I agree with you. Like, this is Fanatics drives me insane. Like all around the company itself, like every facet of it drives me insane. This would be an interesting question if you made it like Thunder plus 500, you know what I'm saying, or plus 800, or plus like a 10 to 1 or something, where you're getting like a nice payout there, but you have to hold and you're not getting the cash in pocket at plus 135. This is not even a close. What are you talking about? Like, okay, if you're going to give me some great odds, then okay, we got like an actual debate. But no, this is like any rational person takes the cash here.
Okay. Tell me if I'm missing something. This is very obviously take the cash. Would you rather 15K or a bet that if it wins, you get 20K? That's the payout. You don't get the return on the stake. I can bet the 15 K on the Thunder at plus 135 and get $35,000 if it wins instead of 20K. Like, what are they even asking here? Yeah, if it's plus 500, now we're talking about a much larger payout. But like, still, I'd rather have the cash. And if I want to bet the plus 100, I can with that cash, and I can still have the cash and the winnings of the bet. Who thought of this question? Like, you can just bet the cash on it. Would I rather have bonus bet or actual physical money? I'm going to take the money and bet with it. Porter, give us your take on it.
Right. So I'm going to assume that at Fanatics, they don't really know how sports betting works. And they meant
it's some intern who posted this.
They meant to write what you just said, I think, so that you would get the 15K back. Otherwise, this is literally absurd. But a fun little thing on this is a moment where you can, and we talked about this last week, where you can use AI, ChatGPT, and type out a question and get the answer. Now, assuming it's the way that, I think they intended, where, you get 15 back, not as a bonus bet. You can literally just type this into ChatGPT, and I recommend people do this all the time. You just put in the free rate, whatever the bond is, 2 month, 3 month, and this is the way to use ChatGPT where you're just writing things. This is a great example of where you can just plug something in. You don't need to use Claude. You don't need to use formulas. So I think it ties in beautifully with last week's segment on that, where you literally can just plug this into ChatGPT, write this question out, and it tells you your exact rate. Now, again, this is totally insane question because I don't think they meant it like this. But who knows what the interns know over there.
Well, like, even if, okay, let's take it like the way you're saying. Like, let's say it wasn't a bonus. Would you rather have a 15K ticket on the Thunder? Like, you could just also have the cash and then decide to make that bet if you wanted to. I can't see any.
They're trying to say that the plus 135 is like a good price, and I think they're trying to say that it's a 15K. You could take the cash because otherwise, or maybe this is their customer. Maybe their
I don't know.
Customers think this is close.
Like, the way it would have to be framed is, would you rather have just 15K or would you rather have the 20K if the Thunder win, but it's not accounting that I can just make this wager with the money that you're giving me. I can now, based after you explain, I can see what they were trying to say. Would you rather have the chance at 20K or have 15K right now? But a lack of understanding of sportsbooks and how they work from a sportsbook's direct account is how we've led to this predicament.
Maybe they really just know their customer really, really well.
Yeah. I actually should have combed through the replies a little bit more to see if there was a lot of people like, I can definitely try and get the 20K. Because I looked through a little bit of the comments, and they're all kind of like on the same point. I'd be like, this is really stupid. But yeah, there's some people like, this is the freest money on the Thunder. So okay. Maybe comments are worse than I thought.
I'd bet like 50% of their people that have an active Fanatics account in their own name would take the plus 135.
Yeah. People are saying the 15K, but like, because the Thunder have been bad recently, or like, why risk it? Like, this is a sad conversation, unfortunately. It's so obvious to take the cash in this scenario, please. Hey, if you disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Two more to talk about on the show today. Before we get to those two, let's learn about a brand new tool that's hitting the market that you can add to your betting arsenal.
If you're a bettor building your own models and you're not watching Kalshi and the rest of the market in one unified feed, you're probably missing edges. Prediction data aggregates and normalizes data from Kalshi, major prediction markets, and sportsbooks into a single API built for backtesting and live trading. You get live prices and historical data in one clean schema with no data engineering headache. If you want a trial key, you'll need to book a quick demo. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code to get your trial key.
So these last two topics are kind of going together a little bit here. It's, I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about touts. And we have the first one here that comes from Eddie at Walls_Edwards. I'm so bored with anti-tout sentiment from shows brought to you by Kalshi, DK, and FanDuel. So direct shot at us. Not direct shot, indirect shot at us there. It's been the same damn curriculum since 2006. Either put the content out for free with no sponsors, no referral packages, no kickbacks, or it's pot/meets kettle with no high horse. I'm not against touts, and yes, I know most touts are awful, but if you're trying to convince me that you're against profiting off of bettors, you're doing arguably more damage by offering nothing actionable and just saying, go gamble your brains out on today's sponsor of the show. Obviously, I'll have pushback on this, but let's start with Porter on this one.
Yeah, so I think we've continued our climb this episode of, touts, bettors who know more and more, and hit, like, for sure on this episode kind of towards the top end of people who kind of know what they're talking about. I think sometimes we all kind of get trapped in our bubble of how we make money. And I think I've heard Spanky on episodes of his where, you sort of, I don't know if it's show respect, but maybe you can learn something from hearing other legitimate people's perspective of how they earn that also feel like they're providing value for their customers. So, like, there are extreme levels of this where we started at the beginning with people who don't really know what they're talking about and got into an end where people do know more what they're talking about. And I feel like they do have a right to defend how they earn, if how they earn in theory is supposed to make customers money.
And next, we will go to Knish on this one. How do you feel about what's said here?
I mean, this is Eddie and I have had a little chirping over the years, but like this is the old, like, I want to defend my business model, which is touting, so I can, like, I'm gonna, like, kind of mold and shift it and then be able to, like, throw it back at people who are doing something not like touting whatsoever, but it can, like, I can make the argument that, like, oh, it's just as bad. Listen, I don't think putting out content, also like a lot of like educational and informative content, just because it's sponsored by a book does not indicate like, hey, just go gamble your brains out on today's sponsor of the show. Again, I think this is a very much a false equivalency between touting and content.
Yep, definitely agree on parts there. China, anything to add?
Yeah, pretty much. These guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, touting is just the worst. 99.9% of these guys are just going to take your money and drag you through the mud slowly, and you're just going to keep paying them and paying them and paying them and paying them. So, I don't know. Not much to add here. Just touts are bad.
Yeah,
that's it.
I find it I just find this conversation weird because there are a lot of shows, like I think this one, that there's never an advocacy for go gamble your brains out of today's show sponsor. A lot of the content that we do here is educational, and the anti-tout sentiment that you get oftentimes from this show, and you just got from China there, is on like these, like, if these people were successful sports bettors, like, you have to question why they would not just be betting these things themselves, why they have to go to clients, why they have to go to customers to get profitability out of the industry. It's just educational content from our perspective, and we feel strongly most of the time, 99.9% of the time, against touts. But the last topic on the show is staying... Oh, sorry, Trent, do you have something to offer there?
Yeah, I was going to say, without Circles Off or Bet the Process or Spanky's podcast, like, the amount of stuff that I've learned from listening to these podcasts and just listening to other people talk, like Porter alluded to, it's absolutely invaluable to where you can take your betting and what level you can take it to. It's just it's night and day, the two things that he's talking about here.
That's a great point. Like a legitimately great point. I agree with you, where not only, and I'm not just gassing up our like podcasts I've listened to over the years that have taught you like methodologies, different ways to win, different like other is so much more than you would ever get from following a tout, even a winning tout service. So yeah, I'm with you there 100%.
There are episodes out there, this podcast, other podcasts, where I've listened to before, and I'm just literally sitting there like, stop. And it is amazing to me that not enough people are finding those resources. Where I've actually heard not too long ago an episode where I believe he gave out the entire formula of how to win at props. It was crazy. And the viewership was kind of low. And I was just like, this is crazy. What's going on? So for the users out there that are trying to learn, there is great content, circles back, circles off. There is great content out there to actually become a better sports bettor that has nothing to do with just, hey, get behind a computer, model. There are so many other components where you need to be thinking like lucidly, clearly, creatively, and putting it all together. And these kind of shows help you do that.
Well said.
One more thing. The other thing is and the reason why people aren't going to take the time, or not everybody, but most people just want the answers fast, and they just want the answers giving to them, and they don't want to put in the work. But if you put in the work, you'll get the results. Go find the good stuff. Yeah.
Last topic, same kind of deal with touts and the predatory nature sometimes that we see with touts and a platform like DubClub. DubClub is promoting at ChillyBets, who might sound familiar from some of the coverage we've done on the show. They were promoting him. They were saying, sign up to get his picks. And Kirby points out something that we mentioned on the show previously. DubClub promoting a known scammer is all I need to know about their platform. And Fozen replied and said, this is the guy that got exposed for editing 9-cent tickets, by the way. Pretty sure issued an apology. Actually, I don't know if it was the guy who did it, said he did. No, I don't think it was this guy. There was somebody who said they didn't edit their tickets, then it was proven they did, and then put out a big apology. I don't think this was an example. This was a person who had very, very, very credible and solid evidence to suggest they were editing their bet slips to make themselves look better and promote their pick selling service. So, there exist people who sell picks and do so ethically and effectively towards their clients, but there are so many that don't. This is just another prime example of ways you can be deceived by somebody and coerced into buying their picks. Let's start on this one with Knish. What's your reaction here?
I only have one thing to say on this topic, and it's this belongs in the chopping block. Zilbo, we're fighting the good fight for you. Bring back the chopping block. If I got to go to the office and, make this up for Jacob do it, well, do that. If I got to go to Toronto. So hopefully the chop is back sooner than later.
Anybody else, anything to add?
I mean, I wish I'd seen this before I made a comment the last time. This is the best example of the head drug dealer and his little minions underneath him. DubClub is like the mothership that is allowing kingpin that's allowing all this flow of the poison into the community. And these other people, they're just the sellers and the pimps of DubClub and WAP and all these other poisons.
China, anything to add before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's editing their bet slips or anything like that is the ultimate scum, and anyone that promotes that is the ultimate scum. That's about all I got to say there.
All right. Good way to end off the show. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this edition of Circle Back. If you enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this on Circles Off. We have tons of exciting content coming your way very, very soon. We're doing a lot of new things that you're going to want to check out. So make sure you stay tuned on the channel. We will, as always, see you again next time.